Back to the Arbitrary YouTube channel. Today's class we'll be learning how to make this plunging neckline illusion blouse with cape. Okay, so it has a yoke and this cape going from front to back. If this is something you like to learn, kindly stay tuned to the end of this tutorial. Thank you. So to make this now, I have my basic bodies already because we're going to be doing lots of things here, so I don't want the video to be too long. I already drafted these basic bodies and there are several tutorials on the channel on how you can draft this if you don't know how to. So this is the front. I have my shoulder dart and my underbust dart here, and this is the back panel. Also I have my sleeve block drafted also because I'm going to need it. So for your front you just need a half scale bodice. You need a half scale bodice for your back also. It doesn't have to be full, but for your sleeve, because you're going to be joining the front and back together, you need your sleeve to be on a full scale like this. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do now is to close my shoulder dart. And to close my shoulder dart, I'm just going to open my dart here, and then I can open this shoulder dart. Then I'll close it and automatically transfer the dart there to my waist. So using my masking tape, I'm just going to close up this dart and then withdraw my shoulder point. Okay, so now after doing this, okay, so now I've blended my shoulder and this is what I have. So now the first thing I will note is my paper is folding. The first thing I will note is where I want my cape to start, because the focus on this tutorial is actually on the cape. So you need to note where you want your cape to start on your armhole area. So you can either measure your armhole here now and divide what you have by 2, or you just decide it on your own. So now from my shoulder point here, I'm going to measure around 4.5 inches, and then I'm going to note it. Okay, so this point that I've noted here now, I'll note it on my back bodies also. So you can just place them against each other as you can see, and then you mark it, or you can just measure the 4.5 inches also. Okay, so these points are noted on both my front and back. Now I'm going to bring in my sleeve. So to do this on your sleeve also, you can just place your tape from this head of your sleeve here now, and then you mark the 4.5 inches. Okay, so from here now you can see how I'm measuring it. I hope you can see this. Okay, so from the head of my sleeve here, I'm just measuring the 4.5 inches, and I have it here and I'm noting it. You do the same thing for the back part of your sleeve too. If you did not draft the front and back the same way, so you measure your 4.5 inches and then note that point now. So we have all these points noted. The next thing we're going to do now is to connect them together. Then how do you connect it? You place your front block. I hope you can see this. You place your front block like this, and then you connect your front block with where your sleeve is. You can see how I'm matching the points up. Then once I connect it like that, I'm going to hold it with a masking tape. So I'll hold this point with a masking tape, and again I'm going to bring in my back block also, and then I'm going to connect it with that point. I hope you get this. So once it matches like this now, I'm going to cut my masking tape also. Okay, so now the next thing now is to draw our cape. So you should pay attention to how the cape is shaped. You can see that it is narrow. It starts around the underbust area here, and then it just narrows towards the upper part here, towards the chest area, and then from here it just goes straight to the armhole before it reaches the sleeve area. Okay, so what I have here now is what I'm going to be trying to replicate on my pattern. And to do this, I'm going to, you can use your free hand, or you use your curve. But I'm just going to use my free hand, then I'm going to work with my pencils first before I make it bold with the marker, just in case I don't like any shape that I draw. So now you're going to note the depth of this, the depth of your cape, which automatically is your yoke also. And like I said, it's around the under bust area on the pattern. So you can follow this also, or you can just move it up or down depending on what you want. But I'm just going to maintain the underbust that I have there. So from that underbust now, I'm going to try to draw a curve. So from here, remember I said it just goes from where the meeting point of the armhole area like this, it just goes like this. Okay, so I have something like this, a bit bent, and then from there I'm just going to connect it to my under bust in this lantern form. Okay, so I'll make sure it join each other. So I'm just going to hold this part also with a masking tape so that it doesn't give me issues. So now I'm blending everything in, and then this is what I have for the front. So like I said, if you're not okay with it, you can just clean it up and redraw something else. That is why I'm using a pencil instead of a marker. Okay, so now we're going to be connecting this to our sleeve area. So again, you can just check what you have on the sleeve. So on the sleeve area here, you can see that it's bigger on this sleeve area, so, and it goes like it's just straight from one sleeve to the other. So now on my pattern also, I'm going to take my ruler and then connect from this point at the back to the point at the front on my sleeve area. Okay, so I'm connecting like this, but at the same time I don't want it too obvious that it is sharp. I don't want any sharp fit there, so I'm going to try as much as possible to blend it. And to do this, I'm just going to fold this like this. Okay, you can see the way I'm folding it. So now, because I don't want this to look like it's V, so I'm just redrawing what I have there now so that I can just blend this in. Okay, or you can just draw it, it doesn't have to be straight. You can just draw it from here now to meet what you have there. Whichever one you work with is fine for you. So this is just me redrawing my curve, okay, to meet this point, and then from there it goes all the way like this. So now the next thing you're going to draw is how wide your curve is going to be. Okay, so this is the line that I've chosen to work with. I'm just trying to clean up the rest so that it doesn't become confusing. So now the next thing you need to note is how wide your cape is going to be. And like I said, it just narrows down from here. It's kind of big on the sleeve area. So on the sleeve area now, you can just measure maybe 4 inches or 5 inches downwards, because it's quite wide. So I'm just going to measure 4.5 inches. Okay, and then from there I'm going to connect it in a narrow way all the way to my underbust area here. So again, using my pencil, I'm going to connect it like this. So all these that I'm doing, you can actually use a curve for it, but I just chose to use my free hand. Then I'm going to connect this all the way to the 4.5 inches mark that I marked down. I hope you can see what I'm doing very well. Okay, so I'm connecting from my underbust here like this all the way to my 4.5 inches mark like this. So I have this, you can see how it just narrows from the underbust all the way, then it broadens all the way to the sleeve area. So I'm through with the front now, and I'm just going to turn it now and work on the back also. Okay, so now this upper part becomes our yoke. Remember, this has a yoke. If you check the picture, so you can see the yoke that we have there. It's a net. I hope you can see this well. Okay, so now we'll move to the back. So the back is entirely dependent on how you want it. You can just maintain from where it joins, from this point where it joins each other, you can just maintain a straight line there. But because I don't want it just straight, I want the back to be a bit stylish also, so I'm just going to slant it a bit using my straight ruler. Okay, so from that point I'm going to slant it to my center back, okay, like this, and then I'm just going to connect my zipper straight like this. So the next thing now is to note how deep this, how wide the cape is going to be. So again, where we stopped our cape for the front, that's 4.5 inches from this line. I'm going to mark that 4.5 inches here also, or you can just pick it up now and look for where you stopped it there and mark it. And then from there I'm going to decide how wide I want it to be at the center back area also. So I can just measure maybe 3 or 3.5 inches. This is entirely dependent on you and the style you want to work with. So now from there I'm going to connect it using my ruler again, and then I'll connect it like this. Okay, so this is what my cape for the back is going to look like. So if you want your cape to enter into your seam allowance, that is why I'm just drawing it inside the seam, inside the zipper allowance like that. So this is what we have for the back, and this is what we have for the front. So now when I open this out, you can see what my cape is looking like. Okay, you can see the shape that we have from the front. Okay, from the under bust on the front like this, all the way to the sleeve, and then back to the center back. So what I'm going to do now is to get my tracing wheel, and then I'm going to trace out this cape on a fresh paper. So now this is on a fresh pattern. As you can see, I just got a fresh paper and then I place this on it. So let me just hold this. The paper keeps rolling. So I'm just going to hold this. So this is my tracing wheel. So exactly what I have here now, I'm just going to use my tracing wheel to trace it out like this on a fresh paper. So I'm tracing out what I have. So this tracing wheel will just help you to see it once you remove your pattern. So I'm going to trace out exactly what I have here, both the upper part and the lower part. So I'll do that now and then bring it back to show us. So I've traced this out now using my tracing wheel, but before I remove this tracing wheel, I just want to note some important points there. Okay, and then again I forgot to make this bold using my marker, so let me just try to draw this out. I don't know if you can see the pencil well, but this is the shape that I have here. Okay, and I'm sure we understand how we got this shape for our cape. So this is the upper part and this is the lower part of the cape. So this is actually not necessary, but I just want to make it bolder so that we can all see what we have here. Okay, so now this is our cape. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to note this point. Okay, so I'm going to note this point as where my center back meets with my center front. Okay, this point, and then here, sorry, where my sleeve meets with the back armhole, and here is where it meets with the front armhole, and then here you can just note this point as the mid part of your sleeve. Okay, so any just important points that you need to note, just note it there so that it will help you. So now I'm going to remove this pattern and then I'll draw out what I have. Okay, so I can see it. For me, it's just going to leave dotted lines there for you. So I'm just using my marker to trace out the dotted lines that I have. So after doing this, you just add half inch seam allowance round it for you to turn it. So you have it like this, and then I'm going to connect the center back like this. So after drawing out my cape, I'm just going to add my allowances around it and then I'll cut it out. So now I've added my allowances now, and I've cut this out. So I'm going to bring in my pattern so that I can easily note those important points that I want to note. Then I'm going to place my cape on it. So your cape has to fit like this, okay? So once I have my cape on it now, I can note this now as my, you can even label it as your front armhole. You can label this as your back. Any important points that you need to note, you just need to note. But these two are actually very, very important, okay? So after noting all this now, I'm going to bring it out, and then I'll detach my sleeve from my center front and my center, from my front and back, so that I can cut out my yoke. Okay, so now I have this. So now using my scissors, I'm going to cut this out. So this upper part now becomes my yoke, and I'm going to be cutting that with a net fabric for my front. Okay, so this is the yoke, and then here I'm going to cut out my so I'll also cut out my dart. So this is my center front, and this is my side front. So the same thing now, I'm going to do it for the back also. I'll bring in my back also. This upper part is my yoke, so I'll just cut this out, and then I'm going to label it yoke. So here now, the center back, you can actually leave it as it is, and then as a piece, and then you take your dart, or you could just cut it into two pieces, but I'm just going to leave it as it is. So now I'm going to go ahead now and cut all this on my fabric. So I'll cut this using this, the main bodice. I'm going to cut it using my doll face fabric, and then this yoke for both front and back, I'll cut it using this net that I have here. You had your allowances where necessary, and then my cape also is going to be cut using my doll face fabric, and also I'll cut my sleeve. So you need your sleeve pattern also using this net fabric also. So I'll go and cut all this now and bring it back to show us. Okay, so before I go, let me just show us what I want to do with the cape. You can actually cut your cape like this, okay? But for me, I want it to be a little free on the arm area so that I can raise my arm very well. So to do this, I'm going to connect it. Remember, this point here is where the armhole joins to the sleeve on the front and back, and this is the midpoint of the sleeve area. So I'm going to connect the midpoint of the sleeve from the upper part to the lower part like this, and once I connect it like this, I'm going to slash it. So I'll slash it, and then I'm going to spread it a bit. Okay, note that I'm slashing from this lower part to the upper part, because this upper part is what you are going to be sewing back to your bodice, and it has to remain the same. So you make sure that your spread doesn't affect the measurement that you have here. The only spread that I'm doing is on the lower part. I'm just doing a little spread like this so that I can have more room to accommodate my arm. Okay, but if you're okay with it being just flat around your armhole, you can leave it like this. I just want to produce this little space to mine, so that's why I thought to show us. So I'm going ahead to cut all my pattern. This is the yoke for the front, and I cut it with net. This is the yoke for the back. These are my two sleeves. This is the back panel, and then I added allowance on the upper part. Remember, I'm going to be joining that part to the yoke. I also added allowance to the yoke. So this is my back, this is my front bodies, both the center front and the side front. So for my side front, I just slashed it open okay, so that it will be easy for me to sew. I have two separate section front, and you can see that I just added tiny allowance for me to sew it back there. Okay, so this is my cape. So for my cape, just like I showed us, I did slash and spread to just introduce this small space so that it can allow my hem to just relax well. And then here on these 2 points that I noted on the upper part, you want to notch it. So I cut four of these, one for main fabric and one for lining for the two side. Okay, one is going to be on one side and the other is going to be on the other side, and they are both going to have linings. So that was why I cut four, because I'm using the same fabric as my main bodice and also my lining. I'm not going to be lining the main bodice, but I'm going to show us how to neatly finish it when we're sewing it. So now we're going to move to the sewing proper. Okay, so to sew it now, I'm going to sew my darts together. Okay, this is the side front and the center front. I'm going to join it together, the two sides, and also I'm going to take the dart for my back bodies here, for the two back bodies. Then for my cape, I'm going to sew it on this hemline. Remember, this hem is going to be showing outside, so I'm going to sew it right side facing right side so that I can turn it neatly. And then also from the front to the back, where the armhole joins the sleeve, I'm going to sew it close just on the upper part, just from this place to this place, because this is also going to show, and all this is going to be embedded in the body, so I don't need to sew them. So now I'll sew this, and also all this, from this to this I'll sew it. I'll leave all these parts open and then turn it neatly. So I'm going to go over to the machine to do that now, and then I'll bring it back to show you. So I've gone ahead to sew in my darts. You can see the back dart is held, and then I sew the front and back together. So after that, I just place my front and back on each other, and then I sew it by the allowance for the two sides. So this is one side of the front and back, and this is the other side of the front and back. Like I said, I cut the center front open, so we have two separate pieces. And also for my cape, like I said, I just sew down the hemline, and then I sew it from the back and front on the armhole, on the sleeve area, like this, for the two capes. So now I'm just going to notch it so that I can relax well, and then I'll turn it out, and then I'm going to iron it flat. So if you're working with a fabric that is not so strong, this is a satin fabric and is not soft, you can add interface to this cape just to give it that standing structure look. Okay, but it's not compulsory, depends on what you're aiming to get. So now this is turned, but it's still looking puffy, so I'll take it to the iron now and iron it flat, then bring it back to show us how we're going to be inserting this inside our bodies. Okay, so I'm doing the same for this also. I'm notching it, and then I'll turn it out. Okay, so to make this easier for you, I forgot to mention that. So where you stopped sewing, you just notch that area. Remember, we are going to still sew this other part into the seam, into the body. So just notch that area. So when you turn it out, it's going to be opened like this. You can see that this sewn part has gone inside, and this part is just outside on both sides. So it's easier for you to sew this part. So the same allowance, okay, so the same allowance to just be outside like this for you. So it's easier for you to sew it into your body. Okay, so the capes are ironed now, and you can see how flat they are lying, and you can see that my seam allowance is pronounced like this, so it will make the work easier for me. Okay, so you, from where you notch it, that's where your seam allowance, remember this part is going through the to the sleeve area, so it's completely closed. So from here you start pinning it, but when you're pinning it, remember there is a sleeve that we're going to be attaching to this armhole area, so you need to leave the half-inch allowance for the sleeve. So I'll leave that half-inch now, and then start to pin this to my under bust. Remember, the cape stops at the under bust, so if you drafted this correctly, you just have to stop at the under bust also. So I'm just pinning this all the way to my under bust. So you keep pinning it like this, so you can see this is my notch here. So I'm already on my underbust. Then after pinning this, you bring your yoke, that's your net. Okay, so you can just arrange it like this to see which one goes with which. Okay, so here goes with this place. Now you're going to be pinning this on top of your cape, but when you're pinning it, you start your pinning from here. Remember, the armhole is continuous from the yoke all the way to the main bodice here. So you're going to flip it over like this, then remove your pins and then repin it. Then we'll take this to the sewing machine and sew. So what I have done to this now, I'm going to do it on the other side also. So now this cape is what is going to join them together. Remember, the cape is going to be fixed to this other side, and then I'm going to sew it from this hemline, okay, all the way to my cape, just to have one single piece. So I'll do that now and bring it back to show. So I've gone ahead to sew this, and you can see what we have here. Okay, so I've sewn it. So if you want to add lining to this, you just need to cut your main bodies the same way you cut your lining. Sew in your dart, sew in the side seam. Then after sewing your yoke to this like this, now you're going to lay the lining on it, right side facing right side, and then you sew it. So by the time you sew it and then you turn it, this will be neatly tucked in, and you're not going to be seeing all these seam allowances again. So now if you check the armhole, you can see that we left ½ inch for the cape. So this is the cape, and you can see that I have enough allowance to sew in my sleeve. So it is important to do this, because if you don't and you sew your cape inside this same allowance, it's going to be very difficult for you to install your zipper, your sleeve. So now we've done the front part. The same thing we did for the front is what we're repeating for the back. You leave that same allowance for the back also like this, and then you pin your bodies, and then you lay your yoke. So this is the back yoke here, and then you lay your yoke on it also like this, but the yoke have to match with this, because just like the front, the armhole is continuous to the main bodies from the yoke. So the only difference is just that the cape is going to be ½ inch shorter than both the yoke and the main bodies, and then you sew it like that. So now we're going to do the same thing for the back, for the other side. And like I said, when you're doing for the other side, you're going to be joining both the front, this side and this side together with this yoke. Okay, so now I just want to show us how I'm going to attach the two sides together. So this is the first side sewn now. The second side I've also sewn in the cape. I've sewn the back yoke. Okay, so this is the cape. So now I'm going to sew it the center front to the center front. So what you do is you place them against each other like this, and then you start to sew from here. So when you are sewing here, make sure that this cape is lying flat, because if you sew it like this, it means your cape is not going to lay well. So you pin it like this so that it will lie flat, and then you sew from here to here. When you get here, you stop, and then you just pick your other side of your net yoke, and then you attach it to this part also, and then you sew it. Then you have everything together. Okay, so this is sewn now, and you can see that we have our piece as just one piece. So if you turn it to the right side now, this is what you're going to have. Okay, so now like I said, this is a requested tutorial, so I just had to quickly do this. I'm not going to be fixing lining to this, that's why you still see my seam allowance here. Now I'm just going to top stitch on it so that my seam allowance can relax. So the way I'm going to do it, I will lift up my cape so that my top stitching lines is not going to show. Then I'm going to stitch as close as possible so that I can tuck in this seam allowance that I have. But if you're going to be fixing lining to this, you cut your fabric and lining the same way that you cut it, and then you sew it separately. So you sew the lining to this side in a way that you place it on it like this, and so that you can use it to cover up all these seam allowance. You can check my tutorial on plunging neckline. There's a full tutorial on how you can line this type of neckline on that tutorial. So now the next thing we need to do now is to sew in our shoulder. Remember, we still have our shoulder points opened like this. So now you place the right shoulder, the shoulder right side facing right side, and you sew. On this side also, you place your shoulder right side facing right side on your, and you sew. So after sewing it now, I'm going to bring in my sleeve, and then I'll sew the sleeve around my armhole. So I'll go over to the machine and do all this now, then bring it back to show us. So the shoulder is joined together now, as you can see, and then the sleeve is fixed to it. So this is what our cape is looking like. You can see how lovely this is looking. The yoke part, the cape, and this is the main bodice. Okay, so the cape just goes round like that, and you can see that it is not attached to the sleeve. So here, the reason why you see it opening here is because of that slash and spread. Assuming I did not have that slash and spread, it would have just been flat. I will not have this space that I have, and I want it to be a little free so that the hem can be raised easily. That was why I used slash and spread method for it. Even if you want more fullness around here also, you can still use that same method to get that fullness. I hope you enjoyed making this tutorial with me. If you enjoyed it, let us know in the comment section. Like, comment, and subscribe to our channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.